The Twin Towers are remembered for a single morning in September, but long before that day, the World Trade Center was already the deadliest skyscraper project in modern history. The Empire State Building killed 5 workers. The Chrysler Building killed none. The Eiffel Tower killed 1. The Twin Towers killed roughly 60, and the reason starts 70 feet beneath Manhattan. 60 names. That is the tally recorded in the Port Authority's own construction logs, a number that stands in stark contrast to the 5 workers lost on the Empire State Building, none on the Chrysler Building, and only 1 on the Eiffel Tower. For the World Trade Center, the death count is not an urban legend or a rumor passed among old-timers. It is written in the ledgers that tracked every shift, every accident, every day a family waited for a call that never came. The scope of loss becomes even starker when measured by the scale of the workforce. Over the course of nearly a decade, more than 10,000 men, sandhogs, ironworkers, carpenters and laborers passed through the gates at the corner of Church and Liberty. Based on conservative estimates, that adds up to about 16 million worker days. The resulting death rate is roughly 3.6 per 1,000 workers. For the Empire State Building, the death rate was closer to 2.6 per 1,000 workers. The Chrysler Building's record is essentially 0. The Eiffel Tower, built with 19th century safety norms, records only a single fatality. The raw numbers alone reveal the World Trade Center as an outlier. In the world of skyscraper construction, where risk is measured in inches and seconds, the tower's record is not just higher, it is off the charts. The Port Authority's own ledger is clear. Among all modern skyscrapers, the Twin Towers hold the record for the most construction deaths. The question is not whether the danger existed, but how it became woven into the very foundations of the project. Beneath the busy streets of Lower Manhattan, the ground offered nothing but trouble. Where most skyscrapers found solid footing within a few stories, the World Trade Center site demanded something different. Bedrock lay buried from 65 to 70 feet below the surface, far deeper than the city's standard. Above it, layers of waterlogged landfill and glacial till pressed from the west by the steady weight of the Hudson River. To build on this unstable base, engineers designed a solution as ambitious as the towers themselves: a watertight underground box known as the slurry wall bathtub. The perimeter stretched nearly 3,500 feet, enclosing more than 9 city blocks. To form the wall, crews excavated 158 narrow trenches, each 3 feet wide, 22 feet long, and plunging 70 feet down. As the digging advanced, high-density bentonite slurry was pumped in to hold back the groundwater and prevent the unstable soil from collapsing. Once a trench reached bedrock, a steel cage was lowered in and concrete poured, displacing the slurry upward. Panel by panel, the wall took shape, with each joint keyed and sealed to create a continuous barrier. Every step depended on precise timing and careful coordination. A single miscalculation in slurry pressure or trench support risked cave-ins, sudden flooding, or worse. The engineering drawings from the Port Authority detail the sequence: dig, reinforce, pour, repeat, until a solid concrete shell stood between the Hudson and the excavation pit. The scale, pace, meant that hundreds of sandhogs and laborers spent months working in deep, narrow trenches, under constant threat from water and shifting earth. The sheer depth and length of the wall set the stage for a host of hazards that would soon become all too real for those below. Generations of sandhogs have tunneled beneath New York, carving out the city's arteries in darkness and mud. Their work on the World Trade Center was both a continuation of that legacy and a leap into new danger. Local 1841, the union representing these men, supplied the crews who would spend months deep below street level, laboring inside the slurry wall trenches. Many were sons and grandsons of sandhogs who had worked on the Brooklyn Bridge caissons or the city's subways, carrying a family tradition that was as much a burden as a badge of honor. The conditions inside the bathtub were punishing. To keep water from flooding the site, engineers relied on compressed air systems that pushed back against the Hudson River. This meant sandhogs worked in an artificial atmosphere, sealed off from the surface by bulkhead doors and airlocks. 12-hour shifts were common. At the end of each, workers had to decompress slowly, sometimes for nearly an hour, inside steel chambers, to avoid the nitrogen bubbles of caisson disease, better known as the bends. Medical logs from the period record several cases of decompression sickness. A few required hospitalization, and at least one sandhog died after failing to follow the staged decompression protocol. The crews themselves were a cross-section of New York's working class. Irish, Italian, and Eastern European immigrants worked shoulder to shoulder, joined in later years by Black and Puerto Rican laborers. The union's records show that safety was a constant topic. Bulletins urged hard hat seals and the buddy system, but the reality underground was often dictated by the pace of construction and the pressure to keep the project on schedule. For most sandhogs, the dangers were simply part of the job. The hazards, mudslides, sudden air pressure drops, trench collapses, were accepted as the price of building something that would last. Their names rarely made headlines, but the foundations of the Twin Towers were, quite literally, built on their backs. High above the city, Mohawk ironworkers from Kanawake and Little Cornawagga stepped onto beams as narrow as their own boots, carrying on a tradition that stretched back generations. Their skill and composure on steel earned them the name Skywalkers, but even the most seasoned hands faced dangers that no amount of experience could erase. The tower's innovative frame tube skeleton, built from massive prefabricated modules, each 3 columns wide and 3 stories tall, demanded a pace and precision that left little room for error. Each lift placed thousands of pounds of steel hundreds of feet in the air, and every misstep or dropped tool could be fatal. Falls accounted for nearly half of all construction deaths on the site. The records show that 45% of fatalities came from workers plunging from open floors or slipping off beams. Another 30% were struck by falling objects, steel modules swinging from cranes, rivet guns, or even bolts shaken loose by vibration. The risk was constant, and the safety measures of the era could not keep up with the engineering ambition. When the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, was created in 1970, the towers were already rising above the skyline. Inspectors found missing guardrails, unprotected floor openings, and a lack of personal fall arrest harnesses. The Port Authority's own safety office cooperated, but the pressure to keep the schedule tight often outweighed the need for new precautions. Temporary nets and mandatory harnesses only appeared after repeated citations and union outcry. For Mohawk ironworkers, the ritual of signing the last girder in April 1971 was both a celebration and a memorial. Every signature marked a survivor, but also reminded those gathered how many would never sign their names at all. Spraying asbestos-based fireproofing began almost as soon as the steel frame rose above street level. Enough to coat the lower 40 floors. South. New York City. But already been signed, and delivery was underway, so the tower's fireproofing continued as planned. This decision became visible in February 1975, when a 4-hour fire broke out on the 11th through 16th floors of the North Tower. The flames never breached the steel structure, fireproofing held as intended. But the same asbestos that protected against fire also set the stage for a public health crisis. The tower's gleaming silhouette concealed a reservoir of toxic mineral fibre frozen into the walls, waiting for decades to reveal its true cost. In 1993, a truck bomb detonated beneath the North Tower, killing 6 people and injuring over 1,000. The blast tore through parking levels and utility corridors, but the slurry wall, the same concrete barrier built by sandhogs decades earlier, held. Had it failed, the Hudson River could have flooded the subway system and much of lower Manhattan, 8 years later, on September 11th, 2001, 2,606 people lost their lives in the collapse of the towers. The disaster released a toxic cloud, and in the years since, more than 10,000 first responders and survivors have been diagnosed with illnesses linked to dust and debris, a toll now tracked by the World Trade Center Health Program. A segment of the original slurry wall stands preserved in the September 11th Museum, a silent witness to both endurance and loss. After the attacks, Mohawk ironworkers, descendants of those who built the towers, returned to ground zero, using their knowledge of steel and structure to assist in the recovery. The cycle of risk, loss and resilience that began in the foundation never truly ended. Steel beams and slurry walls still shape our skyline, but the human cost, 60 workers lost and countless others sickened, remains largely unseen. As cities reach higher, their foundations rest on lives often forgotten. Every new tower tests whether safety will rise with ambition. These stories deserve more than silence.